radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
I need your help to get to the year 1985. You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
How you doing? How you doing? Here we go. It's Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. Today's Monday, April 18th, 2022. 108 days into the new year, only 257 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of nowhere, a total undisclosed location, but it is beautiful in here. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, and north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer, and Unnext Networks. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? Tonight, well, as you can see, we are kicking off our new video debut tonight, and I hope that everybody is enjoying things and got a couple of cameras going on, and that's pretty cool too as well. And tonight, Adam Apollo is here, and I decided I needed the best face. Right? I needed the best face. Adam Apollo is joining us tonight. We are going to be discussing the physics of an extraterrestrial civilization tonight. And I was reading comments and how far they can travel to the stars, how they can do this, how they can get to Earth, how they can visit us. We're going to discuss the physics of all of that tonight. And tomorrow night, Billy Carson is here. We're going to be talking about the secrets of Egypt. That is tomorrow night. Wednesday night, Caroline Corey joins us. We're going to have a very deep conversation with Caroline on Wednesday night, and she has a new film coming out. It is called A Tear in the Sky, which is going to premiere on May 3rd in just under 2 weeks. That's going to kick off. And then Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. All right. Now, I'm assuming on this very special night that the audio is cool. And I need to make sure we did a lot of testing this weekend and to make sure that we had everything correct and set up. And things always evolve, and you tweak knobs and you get things set up. But I think that we're pretty close to the mark. And there you go. I don't know how much things are going to change because we put so much time into this right now. But I think we've got everything sussed out. Okay. All right. And let's see. Where am I at? Let's go through my normal stuff. Also, the intro to the show, I'll get all of that down. There are some other things. I was very comfortable in the old style of doing things, but we'll get that back. But as the audio drops, it starts to warble a little bit, and I don't dig that. I don't like talking over that. So there you go. All right. Everybody wants their own crystal skull. I've got a huge crystal skull collection here in the studio. You can get yours. Visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com, promo code Jimmy, and you will get 10% off of your first or next crystal skull order today. I will be speaking at the X conference coming up in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, May 13th and 14th. It's Friday and Saturday night. On Friday night, I'll be speaking Friday night. As soon as I'm done, there's going to be a live paranormal investigation going on from 9 p.m. until midnight. You can get all of the information that you need over at the unxnetwork.com. Disclosure Fest is also coming up. That is June 18th. I've been hosting Disclosure Fest since it started, and I want you to come and hang out with us. It's only one night, or one day, I should say, Saturday, June 18th in downtown Los Angeles at the Los Angeles State Historic Park. It's right next to Chinatown. It's an amazing backdrop where you have the skyline of Los Angeles right there. It's one day, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and 16 stages, 4 of them for music. And we've got Trevor Hall there, Desert Dwellers, Poron Ghee, workshops with Billy Carson, Adam Apollo, our guest tonight, will be speaking there as well. Lori Spagna, Laura Eisenhower is going to be there. I haven't seen her in a while. Same thing with everybody. I just saw Brad Olson. He's going to be speaking there. I just saw Brad a couple of weeks ago in Sedona. But Lori Spagna, I haven't seen her for a couple of years. David Palmer is going to be there. So just go to disclosurefest.org. And then coming up tomorrow night, Billy Carson is here. We're going to be talking about the secrets of Egypt. And Billy and I are going to Egypt this October. Now, space is very limited, but if you would like to go with us and head over to Egypt, forbiddenknowledge.com is where you go for all of the information and the tour schedule and what we're going to be doing over there. And it's also my birthday. And October 10th, we will be celebrating my birthday in Luxor. So if you would like to go, we would love to have you there, as many fade or nots as possible. When we take those group photos, I want to see those fade to black T-shirts. All right. So Billy's going to be with us tomorrow night. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. The sandbox is hashtag F2B on Twitter. And hashtag F2BQ is fade to black questions. Let's get to the breaking news. This past Friday. Now, I do the news every night on this show. And this news, which broke on Friday, April 15th, this is crazy town. Think of the Tic Tac, think of Catalina Island, think of the ET and UAP and UFO activity that's been going around there for decades. Then this story broke here in Los Angeles on Friday. The U.S. Geological Survey reported a 4.0 magnitude near Catalina Island earthquake on Friday morning, but later determined that the quake never happened. The USGS initially reported the offshore quake at 9:48 a.m., saying its epicenter was located about 18 miles southeast of the island community of Avalon on Catalina and 44 miles south of San Pedro. However, there was no earthquake. About an hour or so after the original report, the USGS Shake Alert System said that it had actually detected a non-earthquake event. What? It is still not clear what event could have triggered the system to register the 4.0 quake, and according to Caltech, the event's algorithm was also different from the usual algorithm associated with earthquakes or the early warning detection system. I'm just going to leave that right there. All right. Now, it is now confirmed. It's official. The hottest rock ever discovered in Earth's crust really was super hot. The rock, a fist-sized piece of black glass, was discovered in 2011 and was first reported in 2017 when scientists wrote in the journal Earth and Planetary Science Letters that it had been formed in temperatures reaching 4,298 degrees Fahrenheit. The rocks melted and reformed in a meteorite impact about 36 million years ago in what is today Labrador, Canada. You got to remember that the Earth's layers, maximum, it's like 3,000 degrees. 4,298 degrees. Well, it finally happened. Today, a federal judge in Florida struck down the federal mask mandate for airplanes and other public transport methods, and the mandate is no longer in effect while the ruling is reviewed. Just last week, the CDC extended the mask mandate through May 3rd, and it is unclear if the Justice Department will seek an order halting the ruling and file an appeal. The TSA, so far is mum. They have, as yet, made a statement about the ruling. I don't know what went on with airlines today and what if passengers knew. Were they saying, I don't have to wear this and pulling them off? I don't know. And TSA hasn't made a formal announcement to the airlines about this. Very interesting. And the news is pretty quiet on the matter. Well, the big news of the day. Earlier today, Marvel released the trailer for its latest film in the Marvel series, Thor: Love and Thunder. All set to Guns N' Roses' Sweet Child of Mine. You've got to see the trailer. The film is premiering this July 8th, and in the trailer, it shows New Asgard. It does. But no Loki, which is why they call it a teaser. Seriously. Let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today, David Tennant. David Tennant is 51 years old. And of course, you know him probably as Doctor Who. I know him from Good Omens. And after I saw him in Good Omens, I started chasing this guy down. I just don't watch Doctor Who, so I didn't know. But I became a David Tennant fan. Today he's 51 years old. Conan O'Brien today is 59. James Woods today is 75. Bullet Boys guitarist Mick. Oh, Mick, don't be mad at me. Mick Sweeta today is 62 years old. And one of my favorites, singer Kelly Hansen, today is 61. Right now, he's been the singer for Foreigner since 2005. So what is that? 17 years. But before that, he was in Hurricane with Doug Aldrich. Creed guitarist Mark Tremonti today is 48. Our dead guy's birthday today is, I need a moment of silence, please, for Clarence Gatemouth Brown. 1924 to 2005, died at the age of 81. Clarence was a singer and a multi-instrumentalist based in the blues. He spent his career fighting purism by synthesizing traditional blues and country, jazz, Cajun music, R&B, rock and roll, folk, and Texas blues. Threw it all in a blender. He was amazing. He was acclaimed for his skills on multiple instruments, including the guitar, the mandolin, the viola, the violin, harmonica, and drums. He won a Grammy Award for Best Traditional Blues Album in 1983 for his album, All Right Again. He is regarded as one of the most influential exponents of the blues fiddle and had enormous influence in American fiddle circles. He died in Orange, Texas on September 10th, 2005 at the apartment of a grandniece. He was 81 years old. Happy birthday, Clarence Gatemouth Brown. On this day in history, OTD, 1906. It happened, 5:13 a.m. An earthquake estimated close to 8.0 on the Richter scale strikes San Francisco, California, killing an estimated 3,000 people as it topples buildings all over the city and starts an uncontrollable fire. Took about a week to put out on this day in 1906. Fate or fact? All right. Roly-polies. roly-polies, pill bugs actually eat heavy metals, such as lead, zinc, copper, and cadmium, protecting soil and groundwater. And that is your fate or fact. They eat heavy metals. They ingest them. They enjoy them. Lead, zinc, copper, and cadmium, and others, by the way. All right, that's your fate or fact. Tonight, very special guest, Adam Apollo is here. We're going to be discussing the physics of an extraterrestrial civilization and how they can travel the stars. We're going to be doing that and so much more tonight with Adam Apollo. And then tomorrow night, Billy Carson is here, The Secrets of Egypt. And then Wednesday night, Caroline Corey is here. She's got a new film coming out. It's premiering May 3rd. And we're going to talk a little bit about the film. We're going to talk a whole lot about science and ET. So that's going down Wednesday night. Thursday is another Fader night with open lines all night long. Now I need to hit this River Moon coffee. What do you guys think? Do you like the view? Do you like what's going on? It's pretty cool. A lot of work, and I'm hoping that tonight's show is pretty smooth, and we're going to get through this, and the audio is fine. That's what I'm concerned about. Video looks pretty good, but it's a new format and needed to respond to the world out there and technology and how people are doing things. And science and technology is something that I talk about a lot on this show. And we're going to be doing that tonight with Adam Apollo. So I need my River Moon coffee to do all of this. I got to sound smart. Physics is tough. Physics is tough. RiverMoonWellness.com. Fade to Black Blend. Yeah, just click on the banners over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. But tonight, and kicking off this very important week here on Fade to Black, we have one of my favorite guests, Adam Apollo. And aside from him just being a really cool person, he's also really smart. And my conversations with Adam over the years always center around, two of my favorite subjects, physics and UFOs. It just doesn't get any better for me, seriously. Now, I've often wondered, what if we actually get to discuss physics with ET one day, right? And I mean a full-on sit-down. And in this conversation, ET kind of just says something like, not really. We used to think at one time, we thinked just like you. Yeah. Once we were just like you, but that's not how we do it now. That the whole string theory thing you guys are, working on right now, it's a waste of time, right? You're spending too much time with math, right? So math is something that we haven't used since the dawn of time. Just think about that for a second. Here's the deal. String theory is deep, for sure. But I'm not going to get into the specifics of it. I'm not going to do that now. That's a whole nother show, and physicists out there can't even agree on it, and it's a big mystery. But the short description of string theory is this. Down to the very tiniest of everything, there are strings that vibrate, like these guitars behind me. And certain frequencies, when they vibrate, determine what particles they become. Right? Now, we're talking about this is the smallest of the small. We will never see it. I mean, we will never, ever, 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 ever see it, as in never. What we are depending on here is math. And the description of the math, right? To paint a picture for us, right? The math is going to paint a picture for us of vibrating strings. And we depend on physicists, these computer screens full of algorithms and whiteboards and things and chicken scratch, and turning that into something that we can understand, both visually and by the mouth and spoken word, to explain what all of this is. And right now they're telling us it's vibrating strings. Now, Brian Greene, who has been leading the research into string theory, says that they have a pretty good foundation going on right now, but the completion of their work, if it ever happens, Brian's words, not mine, won't be for at least another 50 years. And again, that's the math part. That's the math part. And if and when that ever happens, it'll be the numbers that we are shown, and then the description of them. We're not going to see the strings themselves or the extra dimensions that may or may not be surrounding them and where they may reside or anything else for that matter. It's just too small. And honestly, no matter what, it has to be the same for an extraterrestrial civilization, in that they have to have gone through the same processes of trying to figure out how everything works, and at some point discovered something that had nothing to do with math. And to be honest, the colossal waste of time that it can present. But they just found out that you have to work with it. It's just physics. Physics is the same everywhere. You just have to go with it. You don't have to know everything. Do you have to know everything when you board a plane, for instance? You have to know everything? Do you have to know every system and subsystem when you fly? No, you don't. And neither does the pilot, who only has to know how to fly the plane, right? And you only have to know where you want to go and how you're going to pay for the tickets. That's all you really know. It's the same thing for your car. You only have to know how to start it, right? How to point it safely in a direction. That's all. You don't have to know everything about the car and the physics behind it. Do you have to know? You don't. Look, you wake up in the middle of the night and you want the best burger on the planet. You jump in your car. You drive 10 miles in 10 minutes to a 24-hour drive-through. You pay for it with a plastic card. You drive home and you munch out. You do it because it's easy and it's fun. That's why you do it. 200 years ago, your trip for that burger would have been compared to some satanic black magic. Seriously. When we hear different thinkers today argue about how far ET would have to travel to get here and the extraordinary times involved in doing it and the fact that we haven't seen any evidence of this happening out there in the stars, it's the same stuff you would have been saying about your trip for the burger at midnight 200 years ago, that it's totally impossible and it'll never happen. Think about it. E.T. visits us and the rest of the universe because it's easy, because it's fast, because it's fun. It's not a big deal. And we are going through this math and we're trying to and just delaying things and trying to get answers mathematically that may be incorrect from the word go anyway. That's what we are doing today, right? For ET to bounce around, oh man, it's 12,000 light years. Do you know how many astronomical units that is? Do you have any idea how long that would take? Do you have any idea? ET's doing it because it doesn't take any time. Think about it. Now, just like your trip to the 24-hour drive-through today, 20 miles round trip, and you're doing that, you're back home in 30 minutes with a bag full of hot food and a chocolate shake. 200 years ago, 20 miles. Do you know how long that would take? And if you told somebody 200 years ago that you were going to do this in the middle of the night when you woke up and you're just like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to drive to the next town and come back with food. Think about that. It's the very same argument. You drive 10 miles, 20 miles for food because it's easy, fast, and it's fun, and it doesn't take any time. It's the same principles here. The day that we sit down with ET and we start finding these things out about how they do it, why they do it, when they do it, and how long it takes, think about that. And they're going to go, it's easy, man. It's easy. Yeah. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight on this program, Adam Apollo is here. Very special week for us here on Fade to Black. I want everybody to stay right there. We've got a huge week. Tomorrow night, Billy Carson is with us. And then Wednesday night, Caroline Corey's going to be here with her new film, A Tear in the Sky. Tonight, it's Adam Apollo. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer and UnX networks. I'll be right back with tonight's guest, Adam Apollo. Stay right there.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net.
Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Do you have an interest in the paranormal? Then you'll love the unxnetwork.com. The X is your streaming audio and video for everything supernatural, strange, and mysterious, like UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, and so much more. From hosts like Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and Christina Gomez. Visit the unxnetwork.com show page for a complete list of all the paranormal programs you'll find on the X. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for updates at KUNXDB. Follow our Facebook group, UNX Network. Find the podcast on Spotify, iHeart, Audible, and Apple Podcast. It's time. It's new. It's the X.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Manson. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Adam Apollo is with us. Adam Apollo. Now, here is the deal. As a child, Adam had several encounters with extraterrestrial starships since awakening. At about 15 years, he has dedicated himself to extensive studies in theoretical physics, symbolic geometry, past life recall, sanskaric healing, Taoist alchemy, martial arts, energy therapies, occult magic, and many diverse ancient and modern spiritual traditions and practices. He is the founder of the UNIFY movement and several education and technology-based companies and organizations, as well as a faculty member for the Resonance Academy for Unified Physics. He has also provided development, consultation, and white paper editing for multiple organizations following on sovereignty, decentralization, and cryptocurrencies, including Swarm.Fund. Adam is dedicated to achieving sustainable and thriving interplanetary culture. And I want you to visit AdamApollo.com. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Adam Apollo. Adam, my man, how you doing? Oh, you got to, there you go.
Excellent, Jimmy. How are you tonight, man?
I am fantastic, man. It's great to have you here. It's a pretty big night, and I wanted to talk about physics and extraterrestrial civilizations and the science and all of that. Mm-hmm. But tonight, with our new format, I had to do it with somebody that just looked really good. That was smiling.
I appreciate that, Jimmy, very much.
I picked my good friend Adam Apollo. But what have you been up to now? You haven't been with us for a few months, but we're winding down on this worldwide insanity. This is starting. Yeah. I'm starting to feel a little bit normal. How about you?
I don't know if I've ever felt normal in my life, to be honest with you, but I will say that collectively, as a whole, I think that the world is taking a few deeper breaths than it has in a while. And I think that's really, really important because we've all been through a lot. It's been a deeply transformational time. It's been a difficult time for a lot of people. There's been a huge amount of division because of differences in perspective and challenges and acceptance of what friends or family members' choices are. But I think in the end, we learn that accepting each other for whatever our choices are is always the right path. It always brings us a little closer to peace, brings us into a little bit greater harmony with each other. And I also notice in my own network, people are just like, you know what? It's all good. Whatever's happened, it's all good. Let's get together. Let's get it done. Let's move the bar forward. Let's move the boat of planetary transformation.
The outlook that I had 2 years ago was that this is 2 years at the beginning of this, right? That this is going to be traumatic. That in the end, we are going to find out that we're all friends. on this planet, that we can help each other, and that at the end of this, we're going to come out of this better. I know it sounds weird to say right now, but at the end of it all, it's going to be a different world. Have we achieved that different world? Do you think that there's a different outlook with our brothers and sisters, that we're all earthlings here, right, on this brilliant blue ball? Are we going to come out of this stronger and better?
I believe we will. I believe that as communities, the progress is marked by one. It's one person making a change, and then it's one community making a change, one group of friends making a change. And that's the way big change actually happens. It's not always like a flash pan overnight. When we founded the UNIFY organization back in 2012, we had this angle that December 21st, 2012, if we could just get enough people meditating and dropping in together at the same exact time all over the world, maybe we could just pop the collective out of our, trauma state and go into a higher vision of what this planet is. And I can tell you now, after having unified hundreds of millions of people in many, many campaigns, and the UNIFY core team has done a fantastic job, creating and continuing this process of synchronizing people around change making, meditation, around direct action, cleaning up waters, cleaning up the ocean, I'm a strong believer in the collective effect. They say the 100th monkey effect. When enough people do something, then others wake up to it. And I think we're having that effect pretty much constantly right now. But there's 8 billion people on this planet. And so even though there is a massive tide of change, there's still a process that it takes for more and more and more of the collective to actually step into a new way of being and a new way of living. And for any of us who have gone through any kind of spiritual development or awakening experience, that sometimes that kind of experience happens and you go back to business as usual. You go back to the way you were behaving before. It takes consistency, practice, and sometimes repetitive transcendental experiences to stabilize into new states of energy and consciousness so that we can actually experience that more widely as a collective.
Do you feel, I want to just get straight into this.
Yeah, please.
Do you feel that an extraterrestrial civilization would have to have gone through the same evolutionary processes that we did and are going through here on Earth? Did they experience everything, starting with did they start with fire and did they end in nuclear war and got hit by an asteroid?
I'd say that from my experience and my contact experiences and communication with different civilizations, it's been a different path for each species on their planet. For example, for the Pleiadian species, the answer was not fire. Fire was not the big breakthrough, right? The big breakthrough was water, because the planet that they evolved on is mostly covered in water with island chains. And they showed me that essentially the understanding of the keys to water, how water comes into being, how water vibrates, how water can densify and lighten, the mastery of water was the key for them that spawned technological evolution, and all the way to learning how to create spaceship hulls literally made out of aqueous membranes that act like diaphragms, for example. Another species, the Nagura, that I came into contact with at some point, showed me that on their planet, they had this deep challenge of having essentially pterodactyl-like creatures flying around on their planet. And they developed these bone ridges on their heads, almost like a shield-like structure of their skulls on their heads, as a defense mechanism to protect them against these, flying dinosaurs, essentially, that would come down and try to snatch them, try to bite them. And so for them, the evolution was actually about learning how to communicate with animal species. By learning the subtle vibrations that drive psychological responses in wild animals, they learned the subtleties of the magic of sound and vibration and how to actually vibrate things in a way that spawned a massive technical evolution for them. For the Syrians, it's living on a planet with two suns. You have daylight all the time, you got light all the time. You have to learn how to manage light, how to manage sunlight, to be able to see the stars, to be able to work with things. And so for them, light was the functional element, you could say, of reality that drove their technological evolution. So different paths for different beings, for sure.
Now, and what about, okay, so it's water for one, it's energy, light. I get that. What about the other stuff? Mm-hmm. Philosophy. Did they go through philosophy? Did they go through math? Did they go through entertainment and the arts and in writing and poetry and music? Mm-hmm. Did they have Van Halen, for instance? You know, for you, it's Nine Inch Nails, and I get that. But did they do that? You know, did they go through that part of it as well? I sometimes picture a dry. That's my fear, right? Mm-hmm. Some culture that didn't explore the arts or philosophy, that they stayed black and white and pragmatic and chemistry and math and science, and there will be no fun.
Yeah, well, as we always talk about in our conversations, Jimmy, it's tough to throw any culture, any race, any species into a vast enough bucket that you can sort of essentially generalize to the entire way of being. And if we're talking about throwing all the species in the galaxy into that kind of bucket, I'm going to push back strongly, which is why I like to speak to each individual species that I know about and that I've had experiences with. Now, that being said, does anybody else out there have a Van Halen? No, sir, not exactly. Does anybody got a James Brown out there? Absolutely not. But, our journey of art on this planet is special and beautiful, and our specific ways of exploring the universe and the philosophy of being and the magic of music is original and is different than anywhere else out there in the universe. And that's part of what makes us human. That's part of what makes us special. Now, are there other pathways and art forms and capacities and practices that other species developed that could equate to the level of depth of philosophy that we have on this planet, or arts that we have on this planet? Absolutely. In fact, I know of some worlds where their mastery in particular areas has led them down pathways to just things that would essentially be absolutely mind-blowing to us. That just we can't even conceive of society operating with these particular gifts or these particular things, and yet they exist out there. I speak about the Pleiadians a lot, and one of their major gifts is that they have an entirely different way of defining and relating to sexuality than people do in many other planets out there. And
wait, how so?
Yeah, so from my own experiences there as a Pleiadian, as well as memories that I've encountered from many of my Pleiadian friends and family that are here on this planet now, essentially one of the things that they practice is they have these healing spas, so to speak. They're like grottos, and some of them are built actually in caverns where you can go under the water and then come up into these air caverns full of bioluminescence and beautiful crystalline structures. And these are essentially healing centers where there is an open exploration of healing and sexuality. Imagine, a 24/7 orgy going on, but that is not fixed to an act or a particular type of pleasure or a particular type of experience, but is instead this dynamic weave of souls literally, essentially decompressing from their other work in the universe. Whatever they do out there in the world, whatever they do across worlds, whether they're a stellar ambassador or a guardian on a planet, or they're, a traveler, or they're, a translator of language, or they guide in starships from one of the poles in the Sirian system. Beings from all over the galaxy go to these places to essentially completely decompress, go through massive physiological healing, have rich and deep and diverse sexual experiences, and essentially nourish themselves back into their full strength, their full power, their full state of self-love and appreciation, to be able to then go back out and do their work out in the universe. And that's a different one.
Well, here's the thing. Eventually, somebody's going to get shot up on SpaceX's Falcon 9 to the ISS for such an experiment.
I hope so, Jimmy. I honestly do.
We've been waiting for that for a while, right? I mean, it's on everybody's mind.
Sure.
Not play around.
Especially the Pleiadians that are here. They're like, Jesus, come on, humans, catch up. Seriously.
We've all been thinking about that.
Yeah.
Now, to that end, I spoke in the beginning in my rant about the ETs coming here because it's fast, easy, and fun. It doesn't take any time. This isn't what we think it is when we base it on physics, how we know it today.
Yeah.
And you have all these smart physicists, these guys that say that they're smart, Neil deGrasse Tyson, people, and that say, these vast distances, and it would take, a million light years, and and people listen to them, but I don't think that is the case. And I equate it, Adam, to you driving in your car to go 50 miles to buy a pair of shoes and come back home.
Yeah.
You're a fashion conscious guy. That's why. But let's just say that that's the case, right?
Sure.
And you drive for a pair of shoes. You pay for the shoes with a plastic card.
Yep.
And you drive home listening to satellite radio.
Yep.
And you're home. You went there and back. You did 100 miles in an hour, right? Whatever.
Sure.
But 200 years ago, that's black magic. That's crazy. And you would have everybody saying, that's impossible. Exactly. You can't do that. Yep. Well, you do it today because it's fast, easy, and it's fun. It takes no time. It's easy to do. That it would have to be the same for ET, right?
That's right. Stephen Hawking, as much as I love the guy for a lot of his brilliance and his insights, and I love the movie about him, it was just really sweet and gentle and kind. But to be honest, the guy kind of really screwed the pooch when it came to, as they say, how to handle the idea of extraterrestrial visitors in contact. Because this guy is absolutely brilliant, and yet he can't conceive of the idea that some species somewhere in the galaxy figures out how to essentially control gravity.
Right.
Because that's all it really takes. We're literally talking about control over the fabric of space-time itself. The structure of space-time, the flow of space-time, the curvature of space-time, i.e. gravity, right? And so you have this brilliant physicist who's still thinking just, like somebody from the 60s or the 50s or however far back you want to go. The first rocket was in the 1500s in China. And the idea is you put a bunch of fuel in this little thing and you light a fuse and it propels you into the sky. And so people think that the most advanced way to explore the stars still must be, lighting the fuse on a bomb underneath us and riding the explosion, which essentially is absolutely inefficient and is a fundamentally terrible idea in terms of its waste, in terms of the way it works with space-time. Because Einstein, he pointed out to us, he's like, look, when you accelerate through space-time, go up an elevator real fast, you can feel it. You're warping space-time. And the more you bend space-time by hitting the accelerator to get going 100 miles an hour to go get some shoes 50 miles away or whatever that is, Every time you feel that G-force, you are experiencing space-time bending around you. And the more you bend space-time, the harder and harder it is to do. And it gets to the point where it takes literally infinite energy to go any faster if you accelerate up to the speed of light. Now, there's another way around this, Jimmy.
I'm waiting. Well, okay, actually, let me respond to that. Let me respond to that.
I figured you wanted to. I saw.
I saw a chapter in a book, and I not a chapter. I'm sorry, paragraph. And I read it. This was last week, and I read it like 10 times over and over again. This physicist argument at traveling at or near the speed of light in a spacecraft is impossible because every cubic square meter of space has at least a hydrogen atom in it. That space isn't empty. And then at the speed of light, you will be not hitting particles. You are crashing through a sea of hydrogen atoms that would pulverize your ship.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think but that's their counter argument to this, right?
Sure.
There has to be something else in play here. He's thinking of Newtonian physics, right? Just moving straight ahead, and that's it, right? With a candle on the back that's lit up.
Exactly. And that argument also, by the way, has been challenged for at least 2 decades because, in the early 2000s, I met engineers who were talking about essentially using a sonic membrane to provide a vibrational field that would essentially move any particles or matter out from the front of the wake of a ship that is trying to drive its way through space-time. And they were, working on that back with like the earliest ion engines and creating ion rockets and ion thrusters, attempting to do something faster than nuclear or faster than, lighting up dinosaur blood and setting it on fire. And so essentially, the idea that you can that essentially space-time is full of all this funk, it's almost, it doesn't even matter because you're still dealing with the argument that you're pushing through space-time. And whether you're talking about atomic mass in hydrogen atoms or you're literally just talking about the mass energy of the quantum vacuum of space itself, you don't want to try to push your way through it. It's ridiculous. And yes, you cannot accelerate to the speed of light if you're pushing through the fabric. And so the solution, it happens to be, how do you reach a speed or get to some position in space-time without accelerating? That's the question.
You remove the space in between you.
You remove the space in between you. That's the perfect way to look at it, is jumping. But essentially, to remove space in between you and another location, the first thing you have to do is isolate the space-time around the mass energy of the object that you're in. So the object that you're in is in a gravitational pool, right? We are experiencing it right now. If I just let my hand drop, I'm riding the gravitational well of the Earth towards the center of the Earth. But it's not just the Earth's field I'm in. I'm in the Earth-Moon's gravitational field that's shared. I'm in the solar system's gravitational well. I'm in the galaxy's gravitational well. And I'm in Laniakea's gravitational well, our galactic cluster. And that's probably within an even larger, super duper cluster or universal cluster, right? And so essentially, I need some way to separate the mass energy of my body, my craft, from the surrounding mass energy field that is moving towards these gravitational centers, and establish my own sovereign space, so to speak. And so the idea here is what happens if you create a bubble around the craft, essentially creating a field which establishes a boundary condition between the inside of the craft and the outside of the craft, and that essentially divides the fabric of space-time from what's going on inside of the ship and what's going on outside of the ship. And then there's no longer this kind of continuum of the space-time lattice that's intersecting into the mass of the craft, because when it's intersecting, you've got to push through it, right? It's pulling and pushing. It's like, you can think of the idea as friction, but we're not talking about friction at a molecular level or an atomic level. We're talking about friction at the level of the quantum vacuum of space-time itself. So it's removing the mass energy charge connection that exists between the craft and its surroundings. Crazy, Jimmy, except that it turns out that if you follow the physics of unified physics and you look at matter itself and you consider the reality of what's going on in protons and neutrons and electrons and how all of this stuff is made, how the heck is matter and mass and coffee and all these things actually exist? Well, if you take the work of brilliant scientists like Nassim Haramein that postulated that the proton is a miniature black hole. It's a Schwarzschild proton. In other words, the proton obeys the Schwarzschild condition, and its charge radius is actually the edge of an event horizon for this small miniature black hole. And when you do this, suddenly the proton fits into a perfect mass energy scalar relationship from everything that's small to everything that's large. When you do this, all of a sudden, all these quantum gravity equations just work. They just work all of a sudden. You suddenly have an explanation for the strong force. It's just gravity. You suddenly have all of these other theoretical conclusions that open up that a lot of my work is based on, which is the sort of quantum geometric mechanics of what's happening at space-time. And what you realize, and I know I've kind of gone on to some really deep stuff here for your audience, but I'm going to bring it home. I promise. Stick with me. What we've essentially realized is that protons do this already. Protons are miniature spaceships. They have a field that at its event horizon is creating a spin that is reaching the speed of light in a rotary spin form. And because somehow the event horizon, literally the radius of the charge of this proton structure is going at c, at the speed of light, that is a moment where suddenly now that proton has created a shearing condition that separates it at the equator from the rest of the surrounding space-time fabric. And it's able to spin at the speed of light. And, you know, something quite magical about that is that they say that when you go the speed of light, time stops, right?
That's right.
You've now, time is no longer exists at that speed. Well,
right.
We have literally never in the history of mankind, and never will, I guarantee it, ever seen a proton decay. Neutrons decay into protons in split seconds. Everything else, quarks, leptons, you name it, all these other like fundamental particles, you pick one, anywhere out there, they all decay, like, you know, usually in split seconds. But the proton, we estimate that a single proton lasts over 4 times the lifetime of our entire universe. And how do we know that? Well, we don't. Because we've only lived one universe, but we postulate that protons never die. They go on forever. And so they go on forever, but not only do they go on forever, they stay spinning at the speed of light. And when we deal with a hydrogen atom, which is floating around in the space all around me. I've got hydrogen atoms all over the place, and nitrogen. You know, these little hydrogen atoms are essentially like a proton spinning with a little electrical charge bundle around it. It's like literally a spinning field of charge, and it's floating around in the space, and it's so extremely light that the Earth's gravity doesn't even pull it down. You know, it takes being close to the center of the sun for there to be enough gravity to pull hydrogen atoms down, and not only pull them down, but fuse them together and turn them into helium atoms, right? And so essentially, each of these little hydrogen atoms, we also recognize that the mass energy inside that hydrogen atom, if it's actually a black hole, which nuclear physics tells us that these little atoms have huge amounts of energy in them. I mean, nuclear fusion, like separating 2 protons, good God, it's an atomic bomb.
That's
Fusing two hydrogen atoms, you get the sun. Right? And so this huge energy should be extremely heavy, Jimmy, but it's not.
Let's take our
super
break.
Light.
We got to take a break right here. Our guest tonight, Adam Apollo. We are discussing the physics of an extraterrestrial civilization. All of that and much more. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Stay right there.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, VX.
This is Billy Carson, founder and CEO of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv is the fastest growing and one of the most watched networks in the world. I would like to personally invite you to check out our expanding library of TV, film, lectures, and special presentations. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv has over 6,000 videos covering lost history, health, UFOs, spirituality, and our future. We are committed to our community, and with my personal invitation, you can, right now, get your free 30-day membership at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Your own library of information starts today at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv.
Because you never got that pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com.
Hi, Race Hobbs with the X. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you have an interest in unexplained phenomena like ghosts, Bigfoot, and UFOs. And by now, you know that we have our own X blog, the UNX newsletter, and the UNX magazine quarterly. But most of you don't know that we have started our very own paranormal conference. And this year, for safety, this 2-day XCon will be virtual, so you can attend from the comfort of your home. XCon presenters include Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, Margie Kay and Preston Dennett, Lisa Martin and Wayne Lawrence, Lee Spiegel, Debbie Zagelmeyer, Dan Terry, Kate Grabowski, and Ray Hernandez. There will also be a live paranormal investigation by the Riverside, Iowa Paranormal Team. So come hang out with us in the safety of home as we set out to explain the unexplained Friday, May 13th and Saturday the 14th, 2022. And tickets are on sale now. Go to unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier, and this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier, and I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers, and you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black.
All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Adam Apollo is with us. We're talking about the physics of an extraterrestrial civilization. And a great conversation so far with Adam. And Adam, I wanted to go back to the point that you made earlier, about this bubble, this gravitational thing that would happen on around an alien ET advanced spacecraft. What would happen to time in said bubble? Oh, you need to unmute. Oh, hold on, Adam. You got to unmute yourself.
I got it. Thanks, Jimmy. I was just holding it quiet for the commercial break there. So, yeah, essentially, Jimmy, what occurs is that when you are relative to any other surrounding space, time goes normally. As long as you're experiencing space-time around you, time is going to proceed normally within the context of your own space. Now, something that's very interesting and special about the idea of creating this kind of quantum envelope around a craft is that because you're not accelerating and warping space-time around the craft when you move or when you jump, you don't have time dilation. Time dilation, which is the concept that we hear a lot about and Hawking talked about and, Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about in his shows, where it's like, yeah, if you speed up and you accelerate almost to the speed of light going to another star, even if you could accelerate to pretty much almost the speed of light, and that star is, say, 10 light years away, then to get there and get back, even if you are going almost the speed of light, you might experience the trip taking 20 minutes. But back at home, 20 years have passed. And that is because you are literally dilating the structure of space-time by warping the fabric around you through acceleration. So your relative time experience becomes dilated. Now, if you don't warp space-time like that, and you create this self-contained time capsule, so to speak, around your craft, you and everybody else on the ship experience time normally, and all of the surrounding space-time experiences time normally. You jump to another star system, and you literally arrive at the same time you left. So there's no time dilation problems in this particular format.
Are you describing the warp drive, the Alcubierre drive? Is this a version of that? No.
The Alcubierre drive is a particularly interesting approach to this problem. And the Alcubierre drive essentially is saying that if we had the right kind of matter or the right kind of space-time warping engines, you could essentially take space between you and a distant point you're trying to get to and contract that space so that you're closer to where you're trying to get to. And behind you, in the direction you're not going, you're expanding that space out. And
it's a cut and splice, more or less, right? So you're cutting the space in front of you and putting it behind you in real time.
Well, it's not actually cutting any space-time. It's just, the idea is just contracting space between you and a destination and expanding the space between you and the place that you originated. And this is one of the kind of theoretical methods of bypassing the problem of acceleration to the speed of light. Because the idea is, if you just contract the distance, then you haven't really violated this physics problem. You're get closer to to the place you're trying to get to. And so potentially, even if you're not going the speed of light, you could be experienced as moving through space at closer to the speed of light, or at beyond the speed of light, potentially.
Didn't Alcubierre backpedal? He backpedaled because not that the design itself or the idea behind it wasn't sound. It was the amount of energy that it would take for this process to take place, which would be all of the energy in the known universe.
Not quite that level, but essentially, yes. Essentially, we're talking about needing to have some kind of specialized material that essentially stretches and contracts space-time at vast scales, right? And the idea here, by the way, is, again, way, way less efficient than what I'm proposing. Because you're trying to literally take a massive array of space-time going into the distance and cause a change in that entire quantum fabric relative to the ship. I mean, we don't even know what other kinds of problems that could cause, by the way. You know, that's like reaching out your arm 100 miles and trying to like move a big brick that's like 100 miles away with your arm outstretched. Like the efficiency is just not there in that approach.
Now, when you describe jumping, and it's not a warp drive process, even though Alcubierre did describe a bubble that would have to be around the craft, you would be inside of this, protecting yourself as this whole process. But you're saying you have the bubble, but we're not talking about the warp drive process. When you say jump, how does this occur? Are you folding space? How are you jumping from point to point?
Yeah, this is a big one. And this is one that's core to a lot of my theoretical work in this space. And essentially, I studied a whole sequence of different approaches and theoretical observations as far as Einsteinian physics and unified physics and quantum gravity, and looking at, what does it take to contain space-time, and what does a sustainable space-time container actually look like? And essentially, there are two theoretical models that are kind of the more well-known ones that talk about this kind of approach. And one of them is called creating a CTC, a closed time-like curve. And that's the idea where you're literally warping space-time into this sort of bubble-like format, and essentially expecting that can be sustained. And now you've kind of pulled space-time into this structure that's necessary for you to achieve some operation. And this is kind of built off of the Alcubierre drive and the warp drive idea. You can contract space, you can expand space, you can pull space around a craft, making a bubble happen, right? It's all pretty like still hard physics, as you would say, like kind of like exploding a rocket behind you. But then there's another perspective, and this is called a circulating light beam approach. And the circulating light beam approach initially was based on the idea that certain kinds of lasers, when pulsed at the right frequencies and in the right formats, seem to have an effect on the space-time structure between them, right? And this was like early experimental evidence that suggested that light and space-time can have a resonance with each other, right? And in fact, if you really get into unified physics and quantum mechanics, what you realize is that everything is made of light anyway. Space-time is made of light. A Planck spherical unit is a Schwarzschild bundle of light interconnected in a lattice, and protons and neutrons and everything else are literally just space-time light bent into different formats. And so the idea here is that light and gravity have a resonance. Now, a couple of guys, Roger Scheuer and a few other gentlemen, created this particular kind of drive that's called the M drive, also known as the Canet drive. And this drive essentially is just a conic-like craft, a tube, and inside is fired microwave frequency light. And the microwave frequency light causes this object to propel itself through space without any thrust. Nothing's pushing out the back, Jimmy. And the physicists who saw this, and this is well-proven science, some of the best descriptions of this say that it is very likely, it appears very likely, that we figured out some mechanism where light has a resonance with the quantum fabric of space-time. And this is causing the light to push against this quantum field that exists in space, right? To cause this thing to move. Now, we can take those ideas and we can say, okay, well, what if you could create a type of ring system? This is my approach, is that if you take a ring system and essentially you create a standing wave vibrational field that is in direct harmonic intersection with the structural geometry of the way that space-time fabric is set up, you could essentially create a field where space-time is sheared, where there's literally a division between the internal and the external space-time around this craft, which is what I was talking about earlier. Make a bubble, right?
Okay.
You do it with this complex ring system, and you do it with them spinning and, you know, these particular lasers that interface with the geometry of space. You know, they're going off at the resonant frequency of space. So you're creating an artificial standing field the way that a proton creates a standing field. And then the question is, how the heck does that thing move? And where does it go? How do you pilot this thing? You've now separated outside space-time from inside space-time, which is what it looks like all of these ships are doing, and what my galactic friends absolutely say they're doing, where they can turn 90 degrees, no G-force. They can literally fly into a mountain, no impact, because they're literally operating in a craft that essentially has removed its interconnection with the surrounding space, almost like it's in a different dimension, right? And we have all these people who talk about these beings must be next other dimensional, fifth dimensional, or higher dimensional, because it seems like they can do things that aren't possible in our physics. Well, it turns out it is possible in our physics if we leverage this kind of approach. So, anyway, how does this thing jump to another place in the galaxy? Well, do you know much about stars, Jimmy?
I can fake it really well.
I'm sure you can.
I can fake it.
Well,
Adam, my knowledge is smoke and mirrors, but
and guitars.
To the uninitiated, I seem pretty smart. But yeah,
Sure.
I have a fundamental understanding of stars.
Yeah, I figure you did. I've heard you talk to some smart physicists and ask some really damn good questions. So stars, as you probably know, Jimmy, every star has a different particular frequency set. So every star is made of a different composite of materials, and all those materials are burning. And just like when you're in chemistry class in high school or wherever, college maybe, and you're, setting elements on fire using the little gas torch. And boy, I had some fun with that in high school, let me tell you, when the professor would leave the room. But when you burn different elements, they burn at different colors. And so when we look at stars and take pictures of stars, we can essentially know what they're made of. And every star has its own exactly individual DNA, so to speak, of frequencies. Every star has a different spectral frequency set. And so stars, wherever they are, they all have their own particular vibrational interaction of light with space-time.
A fingerprint. A
fingerprint, exactly.
Sure.
Now, those of you that are listening in, you may, want to, chime in on this fact and be like, but however, Adam, Apollo, there are these stars that you're talking about. If we're talking about the Pleiades, that's 400 light years away. If we point to some of the stars that you can see in the night sky around the galaxy, we're talking thousands of light years away to 10,000s of light years away. And isn't it true, Adam, Apollo, that the light frequencies of those stars will change over time because they burn through their gases, right? The more hydrogen becomes helium, helium burns out, it goes through its life cycle. And so if we're seeing a star, it's in a different position than it is right now, for sure. So we have to know where it's going to be, 10,000 years from now, essentially, because it's taking that long for the light to travel to us, because we're looking at it 10,000 years ago. And it's going to go through a spectral change. And so I say, yep, you're right. That's a big problem. But you're not accounting for one particular type of star.
What's that?
And that type of star is the pulsar. Pulsars, neutron stars, essentially this type of star has a very perfect sequenced beat pattern. And that beat pattern is so precise because it's spinning and it's creating a magnetic wave as it spins. It's like a lighthouse. And this lighthouse, sweeping its energy pattern in different directions as it spins, we can tell in 5,000 years or 1,000 years from now exactly what its beat pattern will be, because it has a perfectly measurable fall off when we measured these over years and years and years, right? And their frequencies don't change. The spectral frequencies don't change. And so then all we're left to do is to know where they end up. And there's already been incredible stellar mapping technologies that can show us exactly how the stars looked in the Big Dipper 10,000 years ago, and where they've moved and where they're moving to in the future. And so we can now chart the movement and momentum of other stars in the galaxy. And these pulsars, they act like lighthouses. And we can triangulate 3 lighthouses and pinpoint the position of any point in space-time anywhere in this galaxy.
That is correct. That's correct.
The key.
Okay, so is that the way? I mean, ET would have to understand this exact same process.
Yep.
Right? They would travel the universe using the same mapping. That would be their GPS too, as well.
That's right. And in fact, there's a gentleman whose work I came across, and I can't remember his name. I need to look up his book again, but he was introduced to me by Stephen Bassett. Stephen Bassett was doing a talk on different civilization types, type 1, type 2, and type 3. And, I was talking to him. I brought up to him this idea of pulsars as navigation jumps. And he said, there's a guy who wrote this book describing he thinks that pulsars were set up as navigation beacons by some super advanced civilization. And I was like, oh my God, you're kidding me. Like, that's the way I've been thinking about this. And that to me was a big confirmation, because somebody who wrote an entire book just on that topic, essentially working to prove this idea that these things are navigational beacons, it just made a lot of sense to me. And yes, as a galactic civilization, you need to build a library of the galaxy to be able to navigate. And as you travel, you're going to build out that library more and more and more. And, just like we've done in our sciences, learning how to compensate for movement, red shift, blue shift, frequency shifts, we've learned how to compensate for all of these things to do stellar cartography. And these civilizations have taken that, another 1,000 to 10,000 years of evolution into the future beyond where we are as a civilization.
A couple of weeks ago, there was an announcement that we found a ring in the Milky Way of the spiral galaxy, a ring of the Milky Way that is 12 billion years old. That is almost as old as the universe itself, and another 20 to 30% older than what we thought the Milky Way was. Does this change things too, as well, as far as when stars formed, when planets formed around those stars, and when extraterrestrial civilizations could have evolved? Because now I think the number is 40 billion rocky Earth-like planets in the Milky Way alone, in the Goldilocks zone.
Yeah,
right? At least.
Yeah.
And that now we're talking about the ages of some of these planets nearly forming back when the Big Bang, if you want to call it the Big Bang, and when that allegedly happened.
Yeah.
But we're talking about really, really old civilizations, or the possibility of them evolving.
Yeah. It does several things. I'm really glad that you brought up this study, because one of the things that this study does is reinforce our study and our theories about galactic evolution. The idea that a galaxy, forms, perhaps in a vortex of stars, and then merges and collides with other galaxies, forming even more advanced patterns. And in one of the models, the spiral galaxy is, I think, model 3. It's like version 3 of a galaxy that you get to. And we know we're in a spiral galaxy, or a barred spiral galaxy. And so we know our galaxy's already gone through some evolutions. And of course, we're going to merge with Andromeda at some point. What's it going to look like then? And, the question a lot of people get to is, oh my God, does that mean that all the stars are going to hit each other? Well, you got to realize that it's just like atoms floating around in the air in front of you. Like, they don't need to run into each other that often, for one thing. And it's like this space between these fields of star systems is so vast in so many cases that it's way more likely that two star systems are just going to move into each other's gravitational field and become binary, and the amount of power that the suns have at the center of these solar systems, so to speak, is so great that we could get into a dance with another star. In fact, we might even be in a dance with several other stars, and we would never even know it. All of the planets in our solar system would continue going around just doing just what they do, exactly like they do it. Because 4.1 light years, to the Sirian system or whatever, is a long way. This is very far. This is like a long way that it takes light to travel. And so, yes, it would make sense that there are older stars that have been part of this galaxy's evolution, and that formed way, way back in the early days of the body of our galaxy before it merged with others, before more, stellar nurseries formed, essentially nebulas forming more and more of the stars. But Jimmy, I think it's also really important to point to a particular topic with this idea, which is our galaxy and are the stars in it old enough for there to be lots of other civilizations?
Well, let's talk about that when we come back. Actually, I was going in that direction, but it's one of the most important topics, because
it is.
What we know is Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. So is our star. And our sun has a theoretical shelf life of about 10 billion years. That technically we're halfway through that right now. That's not entirely true, in that it's going to become very unstable. It's not going to be stable for the next 5 billion years. It's going to be very unstable. And other extraterrestrial civilizations out there have to have dealt with the same issues we're going to start dealing with here very, very soon. Adam, let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. And here's the deal. Tonight, we are talking about the physics of an extraterrestrial civilization. What are they doing to get here? What do they know? What do we still need to learn? All of that and much more with Adam Apollo coming up after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and this year, June 18th, 2022, the Disclosure Fest Foundation presents the Mass Meditation Initiative. It's Saturday, June 18th from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. one day only at the Los Angeles State Historic Park in downtown Los Angeles, California, right next to Chinatown. I'm hosting the event again this year with music performances by Trevor Hall, The Desert Dwellers, Poran Gi, and many, many more on 4 separate stages. There's 16 stages in total, over 30 acres in downtown Los Angeles, with vendors and tents and presentations and workshops with Billy Carson, Adam Apollo, Lori Spagna, Laura Eisenhower, Brad Olson, David Palmer, and many, many more. It's all simple to do. Just go to disclosurefest.org for all of your tickets, information, and a full schedule of the day's events. Again, disclosurefest.org. Do you want to be an official Fade or Not? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. Fade or Nots. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Adam Apollo is with us. We're discussing the physics of an extraterrestrial civilization and what that would entail. And I've often wondered too, Adam, if is physics different in another part of the universe and to what we have here? And we'll get to that in a second. You've got a couple of events that are coming up. One is, of course, Disclosure Fest coming up in June. And you've got another event happening here in California. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at an event called Liberty's Horizon in San Diego at the end of the month. It's the 31st and the 1st, I believe. And Liberty is spelled Libertis Horizon. And so Liberty's Horizon. And it's essentially a private private legal agreement symposium exploring the nature of private contracts, trusts, private member associations, essentially all the different kinds of vehicles that you can use to establish sovereignty as an individual, as a community. And that kind of toolkit is useful for all kinds of things, everything from reducing tax liability to building community vehicles, and essentially, is the template structures that are going into a lot of what we call Web3 projects or decentralized web projects. So I'm going to be talking about, in particular, disrupting the social web field and building new systems that can allow us to own our identities, control our identities, have freedom of speech, freedom of connection with each other, not be throttled, and actually weave together as a global community, and how some of that technology can also be leveraged to create regenerative impact, meaning how we actually clean up the rivers, clean up pollution, serve the planet, transform our cities to make them healthier and cleaner and greener and more amazing, because it is time for the technological world to begin truly acting in service and in stewardship to this planet, which has been an area of my work for a very long time.
A bigger version of Fade to Black, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And also what Disclosure Fest is all about, because fundamentally it addresses all of those core things, cleaning up the beaches, planting trees, hunger, and doing it through the community, and also meditation too as well, which is a big part of it. That's an amazing event. I did read through a bunch of the materials, and it's very intriguing. It's so funny. You said to me, you go, Jimmy, this is so you.
Yeah. And up your alley, I think I said.
Yeah. And it truly is. Now, let's get back to where we were right before the break, and that is, well, sort of what you just addressed there too as well with liberties, in that ET would have to survive killing itself, nuclear wars, something like that. They would have to survive burning its planet of nutrients and growing food. It would have to survive pollution. It would have to survive natural disasters. It would have to survive drinking up all of the water. It would have to survive an asteroid impact or a comet impact. It would have to survive another alien invasion, right? It would have to survive everything that is right in front of us too, in order to continue, right? And so when we talk about an extraterrestrial civilization being 1 billion years more advanced than us, or 10,000 years, they would have to confront everything that I just listed, right?
Potentially. I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to run into all of those problems. If you don't build nuclear power, for example, you never run into the potential of the nuclear bombing yourself. If you haven't, made working with fire one of your main things, then you go through a lot of the challenges of the ways people blow themselves up with fire and gunpowder and all of that kind of stuff. It's really deeply dependent on the nature of the challenge of the species and the biosphere that they evolve inside of.
Right.
And it's important, I think, to look at that and say, there are certainly places on Earth that have essentially been pretty much paradises for almost as long as we know humans have been there, because they just didn't operate in the same ways as other peoples in other areas. They didn't get themselves into wars. They never had the threat of a nuclear bomb, or they didn't know they did anyway, And so, looking at all the planets in the galaxy, I think it's important to take them at their context. But, Jimmy, I want to come back to the age of worlds, if you don't mind. Can we go there?
Sure. No, that's what I thought I was talking about.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest arguments against galactic civilizations, and particularly advanced ones, especially with a lot of the different star systems out there, is like, but is that star really old enough, right? Is that star old enough to have an advanced civilization on it? So humans, as we know us, right? Humans as we know them, essentially, have been around on Earth for about 5 million years, right? And you said, Earth is 4.5 billion years old. So there's been a long journey, on Earth to get to human. But humans have been around for just like a blip, of the lifetime of the Earth. Now, one of the star systems that gets a lot of contention is the Pleiades. And I already talked about the Pleiades several times tonight. And so I figure, hey, good opportunity to point out some fallacies in our belief systems about the Pleiades. So the Pleiades, based on really it's one generalized theoretical model that we think is probably about the closest, puts the Pleiades at about 115 million years old. Okay? So that's not 4 billion years old. Okay? That's 115 million years old. So that's a lot less. And so from our sort of planetary...
Wait, Adam, pump the brakes.
Sure.
Say that again.
Yeah.
The age of the Pleiades star system is what?
Applying one of the assessment techniques, we believe that the Pleiadian star system, that cluster of stars, is about 115 million years old.
Okay, my mind is blown.
Yeah.
In that, okay, in let's just compare to what I know.
Yeah.
Our sun, our star system, 5 billion years old.
Yep.
With a B.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about the Seven Sisters, right? Okay. And the age of that cluster is what?
It's believed to have formed about 100 million years ago.
Okay, continue. I need to learn. I'm getting my knowledge on. Okay, continue.
Totally. So here's the idea, right? If you look at the sun, our sun, and we look at Earth, we think our sun's 5 billion years ago, and we think Earth formed at 4 billion 500 million years ago, right? 4.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a fairly close correlative relationship, and we're guessing. We don't know exactly how old the sun is when it was birthed, and we also don't know exactly when the Earth was formed. In fact, if we look at some protoplanetary systems, we can look at them and assess that planetoids, in other words, planet bodies, can be well in formation long before a star, so to speak, ignites. Right?
Correct. Yes.
So in other words, it's possible that Earth could have actually formed, or a lot of it, before our sun even went, essentially turned on its fusion engines and turned into a big, solar powerhouse.
Yes.
Right? And so
yes,
if we take that same model and we project it out, we can look at a very, very young system like the Pleiades that seems so young as to almost be illogical that life could be there, right? And yet, if a planet was forming inside of the Pleiadian cloud from supernovas that went off inside of that, that nebula area, right? And you've got all of this mass and all this matter, and it's birthing all of these bright, hot blue stars. And around all of these bright, hot blue stars, there's tons of mass. I mean, it's literally in a nebula, right? And so what if a ton of that mass and matter was water? And that water begins to form planets around stars that aren't even fully ignited yet, right? So if there were planets around some of these stars, let's say somewhere in the range of 100 million years ago, like around the time of the star formation, and if any of these planets had tons of water on them, well, if we go with Francis Crick, directed panspermia, or we look at any of the other studies that say what happens when you've got the right kind of amino acids and you've got water and you've got light. You've got warmth, you've got water, you've got amino acids, you get life, period. Life comes about quickly. And we look at the evolution of human bodies of 5 million years, and we think, oh yeah, well that makes sense for like a long evolution from Neanderthals and whatever, and we get to us. We look at life evolving on Earth, and we look at like 100 million years of evolution, and we're like, dang, there's a lot that can happen in 100 million years. So why wouldn't it be possible that a humanoid species came about sooner, or even that possibly it seeded a water planet at some point from some other world a lot earlier, and that species has evolved on that planet maybe twice as long as us. Or even if we didn't go that far, if we said 6 million years, right? Give us as humans 1 more million years of development and think about where we're going to be experiencing. I mean, we in our science fiction, we think that 1 million years from now, we think that, you know, and 10,000, even 1,000 years from now, we're going to be using nano materials that can literally form our houses and construct and deconstruct the entire reality around us. That might be within 100 years, for God's sakes. So once you hit this curve of conscious evolution, the potential of a species to develop into a galactic species can take place in a matter of a couple hundred years. I mean, we went from literally no cars, no trains, no planes, wagon, pulling our stuff around, to now I can use a device on my desk and talk to anyone anywhere in the world. I'm literally live streaming with you to people all over the world. And that wasn't even possible 30 years ago.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so if we take that, I like where you're going with this. It's a pretty interesting, not necessarily needing a full-blown sun. In a dust ring, things are already forming. Gravity is already there. That's how the dust ring is with any star system, including ours. That's where essentially everything starts. It's dust and particles that gather together because of gravity. You don't necessarily, and there may be sources of light already there, you don't necessarily need it from the sun. There is heat already there. Okay, I like where you're going with that. So if we take that idea and we throw that over to the Drake equation and where we are sitting now with this theoretical number being thrown out there, 40 billion rocky Earth-like planets in the Goldilocks zone, how many advanced civilizations know about Earth? What is that number now? Is it's not 1, it's not 2, it's not 50. Is it potentially millions? What kind of number are we talking about?
It's potentially millions, Jimmy. The Drake equation easily puts millions of intelligent civilizations that could communicate around the galaxy based on our current science right now. And that's still being extremely conservative with the numbers, right? Extremely conservative. Maybe somebody might argue that with me, but I'm telling you, I've run the Drake equation since I was 18 years old, and that was 22 years ago. So I'm 40 now. I've been doing this for a long time. And essentially, you know, if you look at this dynamic and you look at this, this equation, and you just say, hey, but maybe of those millions, maybe a fraction of those, a tiny 0.01% or something-ish of those, actually becomes an advanced civilization enough to like travel into the sky or into the stars. I mean, literally, you're still talking about thousands of spacefaring civilizations, right?
Yes. And if we take that, like one step further, and we've got to circle back to what we were talking about earlier, and that is the physics in different parts of the universe. Is this: how many have visited Earth more than once? And before you answer, the reason why I suggest this is that there are so many planets out there to explore for an interstellar civilization to go and do. They're only logging. Right, Earth is a number, right? And they've got dinosaurs. Okay, this is where they are. We'll come back and check it out maybe again. We've got more work to do. We've got more planets to explore and log.
Yeah.
How many have visited us more than once? Right? Why?
The numbers are crazy.
It's a crazy thought.
Yeah.
And how many have visited more than once? How many are hanging out here? How many have stayed? And I think that the number is a really, really big number. It's not small. It's not 2 and it's not 3.
Yep.
I think it's in the thousands, Adam.
Yeah. it's fascinating, especially when you start to get into cultural anthropology and you look at how many cultures around the world have described and what most, archaeologists have just thought is, it must be mythology. Like they all just have this idea that we're from the stars. And yet all of these cultures are pretty explicit. They're like, our ancestors are from that star, or like, we were taught by the star nations this ritual, the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota Sioux. They believe White Buffalo Calf Woman was a Star Nation ambassador who came down to give them their 7 sacred rituals. You have the Maya, who say that the 4 corn people of the earth, the red, the yellow, the white, and the black people, these 4 corn colored people are from the 4 corners of the great river in the sky. This is their translation, and they even have maps of it, and the ecliptic plane and the galactic belt. You've got all of these different civilizations. The Tuatha De Danann. The Tuatha De Danann came, as they said, to the British Isles, riding clouds, bringing with them the 4 sacred treasures from the 3 islands in the sky. Now, where are there islands in the sky, right? So we dig into these different cultures and we start to realize this is not just a bunch of storytelling mythology. These aren't just beings passing stories around the fire, making up that something happened back in the day. These are people passing the stories of their ancestry, the truth of their origins, and their connection to these different planets. And so it's more than just being visited by star nations, Jimmy. It looks like to me, when we really dig into it, that much of humanity is from the stars, and that we've been hybrids of other star species for a long, long time, and that we're all actually connected to this greater galactic family of species. These aren't aliens. These aren't even really extraterrestrials, because they're here too. And we're part of this much bigger, as I like to call it, galactic family.
Is physics the same throughout the universe? Is physics the same? Okay, and one idea behind this, and I just, for some reason, I know I'm going to piss a lot of people off. If we just go with the basics, Newtonian physics, gravity, those calculations, which we still use today, right? Okay, we got to get to Mars. Isaac Newton is the one who's getting us there. But is gravity, and that measurement of gravity as we understand it and how Isaac laid it out, is it the same throughout the universe, let alone our Milky Way? Is physics the same everywhere?
I would say that physics is the same everywhere in our universe, but particular experiences of different forces change everywhere. The Mars has different gravity than the Earth, and all the planets in our solar system have different levels of gravity based on their size and their density and all of that stuff. And so is it possible that there are planets in the Goldilocks zone, as you say, around this galaxy that experience a very different physics and evolution of species than us? Absolutely, yes. Some planets will have much heavier gravitational fields. Body types, body strength, body structure is going to adapt to that. There's a sweet spot for gravity and size of planet, just like there's sweet spots for other things. The amount of water, the amount of light, the sun's distance, and all of that. And so, based on the kind of local conditions of a planet, including, by the way, the color of the star that they're around. So the Pleiadians all have blue stars around them, right? So could it be a mistake or a coincidence that the earliest people channeling the Pleiadians or having experiences and visions with them all saw them as blue-skinned beings? That these blue-skinned beings started telling them they're from this star cluster? No, it's not that coincidental, because that just makes sense. That's physics. You adapt your skin to meet the light of the star that you have, and your environment is going to help determine that as well. And so we have different skin types and different body types, and even, vastly different types beyond humanoid that exist in different planets all across this galaxy that emerge from the physics of that world. Although it's all the same physics. It's just there's different local physics that are going on in that position.
And so help me understand this, and we'll pick up when we come back after the break. We've got about 4 minutes. In that our calculations, that it doesn't matter if we're talking about Einstein, Newton, Brian Greene, string theory, our calculations and those algorithms are based on our locality, our understanding of what gravity would mean as you plug this in and these numbers. ET arrives here and they start giving us their information, but it is based on their calculations and their understanding of physics wherever they are from, right? We couldn't necessarily just plug in our numbers or understand what they are trying to tell us. Now, is it because I'm just not that smart, or is that a consideration we have to think about?
I think that what you're bringing forward is a valid point in the consideration of understanding cultural perspectives, cultural dynamics, the importance of certain kinds of mathematical proofs, the certain approaches that these species take. But I will say, Jimmy, that, there are some foundations here we can go on, which is that, when we talk about a constant, mathematical constants, for example, and we deal with physics constants that are based on those mathematical constants. Essentially, what we're talking about is a universal constant, something that exists the way it is and operates the way it does, regardless of what planet you're on, wherever you are in the universe, whatever part of the galaxy, it doesn't matter. And certain things you can kind of logically immediately come to the conclusion operate like that. Like, for example, a circle on Earth is defined by the mathematical constant of pi, right? But a circle is a circle wherever it is in the universe. If you're measuring a circular zone or a radius around a point, then essentially you're going to find pi no matter where you are, on whatever planet and whatever star system. The same is true for phi. The same is true for alpha, alpha Mascheroni. All of these mathematical constants are connected to fundamental dynamics in the physical world. And these dynamics that we experience, these are universal language. And so you could say, and I think there have been many people over time that have said, mathematics is ultimately the universal language. And, Robert Grant used to say that a lot when I worked with him. And he's like, everything comes down to math. If we want to talk to galactic beings, we need to know math. And he's like, super Arcturian dude. So he's like, this stuff comes from other star systems anyway. We're just solving the puzzles that are already here and that are already part of us and discovering more of who we are. And so, yeah, like mathematics is a fundamental to language, because if you essentially take any three things, everybody can agree that there's three things. You don't have to know English to know there's three things. You might call the three things, trois, or you could call it like trece, or you could call it three, or you could call it, any other language, but it's still three things. And a triangle is a triangle is a triangle, a circle is a circle, a square is a square. It doesn't matter what language you're talking about. And so for me in my work with galactic species and in developing contact capacities and experiences, I realized a long time ago that a lot of it has to do with light language. In other words, how the mind visualizes and sees geometry, information, light harmonics, meaning colors, and that can contain so much more information than just words that we speak. It's almost like communicating with the language of dreams. If you can see it and you could share what you see with somebody else, then suddenly there is this deeper telepathic communication that goes on. And that language is essentially universal.
Yeah, it's vibration. It's not words from the Webster dictionary where we find ourselves completely limited. As a matter of fact, we're using the wrong words all the time to describe a situation. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. A guest tonight, Adam Apollo. We're talking about the physics of everything. What would an extraterrestrial civilization use to get here, to travel the stars? All of that and much more when we come back. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us.
the Metal God on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, BX.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? UNX Media publishes nonfiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNX-DB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
Life Change Tea has a great offer for you right now. The 3-pack special. Save $15 on their popular flavor pack of Super Tea. Get all 3 flavors, original, peppermint, and pomegranate. Life Change Tea tastes great. It's an all-natural, gentle cleanse with a unique blend of 12 herbs that helps keep your digestive tract clean, clear, and healthy. And it's so easy to make. Just brew, steep, refrigerate, and drink. Serve hot or cold. And 1 to 2 servings a day is all you need. You take care of the outside. Do the same for your inside. Life Change Tea is made right here in the United States and helps thousands feel their best. It's an important part of any daily routine. So go to getthetea.com/F2B. That's getthetea.com/F2B. That's getthetea.com/F2B.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
This is Billy Carson, founder and CEO of Forbidden Knowledge, and we're heading to Egypt this October. Come join Jimmy Church, myself, and the Forbidden Knowledge team as we spend a week exploring Giza, the Great Sphinx, the Great Pyramid, Saqqara, Dashur, Aswan, Edfu, Dendara, Karnak, and we'll celebrate Jimmy's birthday in Luxor. The Forbidden Tour of Egypt is this October 5th through the 12th and includes a 4-day Nile cruise, expert Egyptologists, and a chance to explore Egypt with Jimmy and I as your host through your journey of a lifetime. Space is limited, so make your reservations now. Please visit forbiddenknowledge.com for information and complete itinerary. That's forbiddenknowledge.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and this year, June 18th, 2022, the Disclosure Fest Foundation presents the Mass Meditation Initiative. It's Saturday, June 18th from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., 1 day only at the Los Angeles State Historic Park in downtown Los Angeles, California, right next to Chinatown. I'm hosting the event again this year with music performances by Trevor Hall, The Desert Dwellers, Oran Ghee, and many, many more on 4 separate stages. There's 16 stages in total, over 30 acres in downtown Los Angeles, with vendors and tents and presentations and workshops with Billy Carson, Adam Apollo, Lori Spagna, Laura Eisenhower, Brad Olson, David Palmer, and many, many more. It's all simple to do. Just go to disclosurefest.org for all of your tickets, information, and a full schedule of the day's events. Again, disclosurefest.org.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Adam Apollo. And we're talking about the physics of extraterrestrial civilizations. I was watching Adam in the chat, and here's the deal, Adam. They're trying to seize control of this show. Oh no, oh, no. It stays right here. I ask the questions, but there's one thing that I get a little bit confused about. I get confused about a lot of things, but we now know that the universe, space is expanding at faster than the speed of light. And depending on where you are in the universe, it may be a little less than the speed of light. And then there's an event horizon going on out there at the edge of the universe, faster than the speed of light. Galaxies are dropping off. And from our point here, we don't even know the size of the universe if it's expanding at the speed of light. And things are moving away from us, we no longer see that. And that's a very intriguing part for me. But this is what I don't understand. If space is expanding at the speed of light, what happens relative to that position versus our position? What is going on with physics at that point, right? If it is, if you're relative there, the best way to explain it, the way that I understand it, if you're traveling down a river, you're next to another boat. Okay, all right, you guys are traveling at the same speed. So if we are in that position of the universe, we are expanding and moving along in space so it's not, we're not moving at the speed of light. We're not seeing things drop off. We are traveling at the same speed. But from our perspective looking out, it's not the same. What happens to physics then as we understand it?
Yeah, well, there's a whole bunch of issues and problems with this whole approach. It gets a lot deeper and more complicated because a lot of our study of universal expansion is essentially based on one fundamental assumption, which is that all redshift is occurring due to space-time's expansion, and the objects are moving away from us because of space-time expanding, which is a perfectly logical and potentially true scenario. There are also, of course, other scenarios for redshift that we could be witnessing. For example, we noticed that expansion and contraction of space-time, in other words, gravitational lensing, can affect redshift and blue shift. So some of our calculations could be distorted by gravitational lensing within space-time. The other problem is that when we look distantly into any point space in the universe, you pick a pinpoint in the sky, you zoom in on it, you look at it, you are looking into the past. And as we look into the past and we zoom in, we see like thousands of galaxies in a tiny pinprick in the sky, and we zoom in closer and closer and closer. The farthest we can see, the deepest deep field images, we're essentially seeing so far back in time that we should be looking at the origins of the universe, right? And so, but what is the origins of the universe in that direction, in that vector? Right? Like, I want you to take account for the fact that you're looking in a particular vector in space, looking back in time because light is having to travel from those things all the way to us. But if the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light in this massive expansion process, well, then that light would have left those things a lot earlier, wouldn't it? Because if the universe is expanding, that light would have gotten to us long before this object is even farther away. Right?
Correct.
So everything is in this highly dynamic relative motion to everything else. I mean, even the idea of how fast we're moving is kind of a ridiculous thing to even start to construct. Because, for example, right now, this is one of the thought experiments I love to play with my students, and your audience will probably dig it. It's like, if you're sitting down listening to this, and you're facing east on that couch or in that chair or wherever you're like tuning into this thing, you are literally riding the surface of the earth 1,000 miles an hour in the direction towards the sunrise right now. You're just cruising along, whoosh, right? Oh boy, the flat earthers had a fun one with this one because they're like, oh my God, well, that would mean the oceans would fly off the earth, right? If the earth was round, it was like everything's going to fly off of it because it's this spinning ball. These stupid people, right, is what they say to the physicists and the scientists. And the physicists and the scientists are going, I don't think you realize just how big the earth is. Like, the earth is massive, and this feeling that you have when you drop your arm, yes, that's enough to keep the oceans down, because the oceans weigh, hundreds of trillions of pounds, essentially. So like, there's like massive amount of weight there. And so we're traveling 1,000 miles an hour, but we can't even tell, because all of the space-time, including the air, the atmosphere, all the way out to the outer atmosphere, noospheric level, is essentially traveling with the Earth. Space is moving with the surface of the Earth, traveling, right? But we're also hurtling around the sun at 64,000 miles an hour, right? So we're like cruising around the sun. It might be 67. I can't remember exactly the numbers all the time. But we're cruising around the sun. We're going faster in our traveling around the sun than any of us have even imagined that we could possibly go, right? And then there's a new estimate for the Earth or the sun traveling around, like the speed of the sun around the galaxy. I'll have to look this one up because there's actually a new estimate for this. But yeah, it's essentially believed to be around 150 miles a second. That's 500,000 miles an hour. 500,000 miles an hour. Our sun is cruising around the galaxy. But why don't we notice? We can't tell. Because space is huge. And we're all co-moving. And the space around the sun is moving. It's not just the sun moving through space. It's space moving and the sun is moving with it. And all of the space is vortexing around the sun. And all the planets are moving in that space, and all the moons are moving in that space. It's like a bunch of whirlpools around black holes, all traveling, in this incredible dance that's moving extraordinarily fast all the time. And so how fast is the galaxy moving related to the Laniakea cluster? I don't think there's a really good exact number. I think there's some rough estimates on that one. And so if you continue adding that up and looking at universal expansion, are we going the speed of light? Is everything going the speed of light? What the heck is the speed of light? How do you even relatively understand light speed versus anything else when everything is moving relative to everything else? This is getting philosophical, right? But essentially, we know only that light moves at a certain speed that we perceive relative to us. That's it. That's all we really know. That it changes when you put it in water, but that's what we can know because we are in relativity to everything else, including light, and most especially light. Because as we know, light operates very differently than everything else. It's perceived as going the same speed no matter how fast you're going. And that's because space-time itself is dilating time and bending light. The curvature of space is affecting all of this. So
I almost understood that. But, okay, but there's always a but. Okay, so sure. You and I are on a starship at the edge of the universe where the expansion is happening faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
And we turn around and head towards Earth. Are we now swimming upstream?
If it's true that space-time itself is expanding faster than the speed of light relative to us, then you would have to be traveling faster than the speed of light to reach our area of the universe. And in fact, the light of our star will never
get there.
Not at some point. It will never get there, meaning that if there is space-time moving away from us faster than the speed of light, we cannot know that by observing. In other words, we cannot ever look at that area of the universe and see that happening. This is why this is only theoretical. That's what I'm getting at. The philosophy here is that's only theoretical because that would exist outside of our light cone of perception. And the only way we could actually prove that relativity is happening is if we could jump to that location. And as far as I can tell, you know, even jumping between galaxies is extraordinarily difficult because you need reference points in that galaxy to be able to jump to. You need pulsars. You need to be able to actually pick out a specific lighthouse. And if you've ever looked at the Andromeda galaxy, like in a telescope, I mean, those stars are so small and so far away. It's a tiny little blur, you know?
It's out of focus.
Yep.
Okay, but what would you and I see if we were at a section of the universe that is expanding faster than the speed of light? When would we see Earth? When would we see our own star system? What would we have to cross in order to catch up to the light? This is so confusing to me. I mean, I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't get it because
that's a tough one, Jimmy.
From here on Earth, right, looking out, we're only seeing the light that has reached us over a 13.8 billion year period.
Yeah.
But if it is expanding past the speed of light, we're not seeing that, right? So we would have to see it on the inside of that frame.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you can imagine it like like these are two light cones, right? And we're at the bottom of one of these light cones. Anything that's within this light cone can be perceived by us at some point in time, right? But anything that's outside that light cone, we can't. And so some position on a starship that is literally so far across the universe, and we're saying it's theoretically in a zone of the universe that is moving away from our solar system faster than the speed of light, then essentially those light cones are angled like this. You will never, ever be able to see that other star. Ever. It will not happen because you're literally moving away faster than the light can travel. And so you can imagine the light standing still, and this is the place moving away, and here's the Earth, and the light's traveling, but the space keeps expanding, so it's moving at the speed of light, but the space is still expanding, so it's never going to get there.
And so for ET to know that we are here, they have to be inside of the observational universe in order to see that light that hasn't expanded out beyond the observational universe.
Yeah, and even more importantly, Jimmy, in general, what we're talking about when we talk about extraterrestrial civilizations, 95 to 99% of the time, we're talking about civilizations in stars around our home galaxy. And our home galaxy is all in one gravitational relationship. We're all circling the same center. We're all still within 100,000 light years of each other, going out to the rim, and and up and down, we're only talking like 15 light years up and down in a lot of cases. Because essentially there's
the Milky Way is a disk.
Yes.
And theoretically right now we're looking at about 100 to 150,000 light years across the Milky Way.
Yep.
So what about visitations from Andromeda?
Yeah, exactly.
That is, now we're pushing something that theoretically probably is impossible, a visitor from Andromeda to here.
It's not theoretically impossible because Andromeda is actually extremely close to our galaxy from a galactic perspective.
Correct.
And could there be enough pulsar beacons, things like that, between Andromeda and us? Maybe. I mean, it even like intergalactic travel at the mechanism that I physically worked out all the details of how this thing could actually work.
Right.
It challenges that theory of mine because it says, wow, how would you pick up beacons in another galaxy necessarily? But then again, that's still assuming you don't have the super advanced telescopic measurement materials of a civilization that's evolved 1,000 years beyond us, right? So maybe they're in Andromeda and able to zoom right in to the Milky Way, all the way up to different stars and measure the pulsars, track those beacons, determine all of that. Because, I mean, our ability to see into space, just the fact that we can take pictures of galaxies as clearly as we do, and that we can actually pick a pinprick in the sky and zoom in and see thousands of galaxies in that picture. Like, our observation abilities have come a long way since, Mr. Galileo and Copernicus and these guys with their, telescopes. And so we can imagine huge evolutionary leaps in planetary visualization, mapping, galactic mapping that happen, especially as a species becomes galactic in its capacity to travel between stars, and then of course to the intergalactic scale.
What an amazing conversation. And I wanted to ask you about things like the Tic Tac. But when I say the Tic Tac, we've also had sightings from millions of people. I'm one of those, and so are you. Yeah. So it's not just the Tic Tac. But the Tic Tac is an interesting subject to bring up because of the military aspect, the professional observations, and the radar imaging, and the amount of witnesses that were involved with that. Do you see the Tic Tac as interplanetary? And is it like a von Neumann probe that was sent here to observe the planet, or are we talking about something that may have terrestrial origins?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a variety of things. I think that most likely we're talking about an interstellar craft that's visiting, a probe of some kind, or maybe even just like a full-on ship that just doesn't have any visible windows, uses different kinds of observation materials.
Right.
I'll do a little plug for our friend Caroline Corey, because her film is coming out soon, A Tear in the Sky. And in A Tear in the Sky, she essentially set up top-of-the-line scientific observational equipment in a triangle, essentially kind of between, I think it's somewhere like Malibu and Santa Barbara and one of the islands, and I can't remember which island it is. Do you know which one it was?
It's Catalina, Newport Beach, and right around Huntington Beach. Right. So that's the triangle.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you knew that. Yeah, she'd be disappointed that I forgot exactly which the spots were.
She'll be on with us Wednesday.
Fantastic.
I watched the film a couple of times already. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And so essentially, in this film, for those of us in the public that haven't got a chance to see it yet, what she's done is she's essentially using this equipment to measure and actually visibly catch essentially what she describes or thinks is a wormhole opening, and things flying out of and into this wormhole in the sky, a tear in the sky. And, so there is pretty clear evidence in that, and also in all of the different kinds of UFO sightings that have happened, and UAPs, whatever the heck you want to call them, extraterrestrial spacecraft, essentially, as off-world vehicles, as the Pentagon has grudgingly admitted a few times, and that these craft have this capacity to warp space-time around them, to essentially have this gravitational bubble that lets them jump in and out of positions, that lets them move without G-force, 90-degree angles, high-speed turns, flying into matter, or what seems like solid matter, flying into the sun, things like that. And all of that just reinforces the immensely powerful level of technology that we're talking about as soon as you learn how to actually control the structure of space-time.
One of the things that I really enjoy about Caroline, and I've said this to her so many times over the years, I'm going to say it again Wednesday night, is that her approach, because she has an open mind, but she has a very scientific mind too as well. It's one thing to have an open mind. Yeah. I get that. but trying to pull in science to the phenomenon, not only with UAPs, but with consciousness and other aspects to our lives. That has always been Caroline's approach. But here's the deal. You've been doing this. Nassim has been doing this. We need more open-minded scientists to come into this community to take a look at what is going on. I think that Avi Loeb is now doing this. I think he has an open mind, but it is something that our government has been avoiding, at least in a public sense, right?
Yeah. It's more than just avoidance. Like the reality is that people like Nassim and I, we have a lot of freedom because we didn't wind ourselves into the academia establishment so deep that we're stuck in there, right? If I had finished the track of going through to get my doctorate in physics and became a physics professor, my hands would be so much more tied around talking around these topics because my tenure would be at stake. Anytime I speak publicly or do something publicly, like my position in the university would be at stake if the university deans, if the education board determined that what I was saying or what I was theorizing doesn't fit within their guidelines. And so it's really easy for the scientific world and a lot of the academic world to essentially just say, if it's not in our textbooks, it's not what we already understand, it's probably pseudoscience. But this is a huge problem, Jimmy, because that's essentially just like saying, oh, so you believe the planets travel around the sun instead of the Earth? You're a heretic. Burn him at the stake. Like, this guy is crazy. Like, this is a pseudoscientist. That's exactly what we're dealing with because it's the momentum of the belief and the understanding within the academic world that creates the context for what's okay to be shared as factual or true. And
now, before Adam, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You're going to stay for overtime. We're going to keep this conversation going. So don't say, Jimmy, I'm tired. I don't have coffee. We're going to keep this going. But is this another prong of the approach that we have to take? We do need the military. We do need the Department of Defense. Yeah. We do need SETI. We do need civilians to come out and speak about their issues. But and we, we need Hollywood. Yeah. We need Hollywood here too as well. But we need the scientific community like Avi Loeb, yourself, and Nassim to absolutely spearhead this because it is just another cog in the machine, isn't it? We need to keep the pressure on.
Yep, that's right. And, my angle is not to do that directly through the scientific, academic establishment. My route is to do that through tech, by building new kinds of systems that prove certain theoretical models, that open up new doors for communication, that help people to build trust graphs and validate in a decentralized way. And all of that work, essentially is about building capacity for humanity to take the leaps that it needs to take forward, and for me to give my work in service. Because it's not enough just to talk about these things. We have to get our hands dirty. We have to get to work. We have to create things. We have to actually build things that make a difference in this world. And Jimmy, when you talk about like the military groups and a lot of the military establishments, I've known a lot of people within those spaces. And a lot of the people that I've interacted with or engaged in within those spaces essentially have, in many cases, information that the rest of the physics world doesn't have. And they know it. They've already proved and done the experiments, and they know something else works, but they're keeping it under wraps. So I see we got Caroline Corey here in the crowd. Did she come to say hi?
That just popped up, and I just wanted to show that to everybody. You never know who's listening to the show, and I didn't know. And that was So
I only knew because she texted me after I gave her a plug on the show. She sent me some love, and I'm like, thank you, Caroline. Yeah, I'm really excited to see her film. And
all right, let's. Everybody just wait, and that'll be on May 3rd. Let's take our break here.
Right.
Our guest tonight, the one and only Adam Apollo. We're talking about physics, science, and what an extraterrestrial civilization would do to get here. When I come back, I'm going to bring up Oumuamua with Adam, and we'll see what his take is on that. And, of course, Avi Loeb. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Adam after this short break. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
Hey, what up, y'all? It's your girl Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Billy Carson, founder and CEO of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv is the fastest growing and one of the most watched networks in the world. I would like to personally invite you to check out our expanding library of TV, film, lectures, and special presentations. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv has over 6,000 videos covering lost history, health, UFOs, spirituality, and our future. We are committed to our community, and with my personal invitation, you can, right now, get your free 30-day membership at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Your own library of information starts today at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, the X.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? UNIFY Media publishes nonfiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNX-DB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30 days free on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment. including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JamieChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Adam Apollo is with us. I got to watch Adam dance during the break, and that was pretty cool. A lot of people, as we head into overtime, Adam, you're a DJ.
I am.
Yeah, you're a DJ.
Yep, since 1999.
And one of these days, we'll have a little get-together at my house. I'll get the setup outside, and we can throw down. This conversation has been an interesting one, and I think I do want to talk about Avi Loeb and Oumuamua for just a bit, because I think he lays out an excellent case in his book Extraterrestrial that Oumuamua was not a natural object, and it defied everything that we understand about asteroids and things that travel through our star system every day. We photograph, we measure, we know the speeds, we know where they come from, and that includes, well, we're understanding more about comets. But everything that Oumuamua showed us was that it just wasn't a natural object. Now, what's your take? Do you think that Oumuamua was extraterrestrial, it wasn't natural, and it was a visitor from another star system?
You know, Jimmy, honestly, I don't really care to try to postulate, exactly what Oumuamua was, and don't claim to know, because I didn't make contact with pilots on a ship on Oumuamua, or like have a direct experience there. And so it's tough for me to say definitively, but I will say that, the biggest notable factor of this study was essentially that the object was accelerating. It traveled around the sun, and it didn't just move in a pattern that suggests angular momentum and the sort of acceleration that happens by slingshotting, right? It accelerated outside of that boundary of what it should have, essentially within that slingshot. And that suggests something very different. Either the object is losing a bunch of mass like a comet, and somehow it's actually accelerating because of the mass it's losing or burning off, or this is not a natural object, and that this was a ship, and it kind of came in, did a flyby, flew around the sun and took off, riding the sun's light, cruising around. So, somebody's riding around at super high speed on this thing for sure. But I will say, Jimmy, also that if it was a starship from another civilization kind of swinging through and visiting, it's a very different behavior than we see from a lot of other starships that come and visit our planet. And that is that, it came in at a vector, using momentum, traveled, followed a pattern of angular momentum, slingshotted around the star, continued off in its vector. And, we just don't really see ships hurtling around the solar system or around the Earth that often that just ride the galactic, gravity well, so to speak. Instead, we see ships that stop, pause, move, blink, do a thing, jump, and it seems, in some sense, more likely to me that that there's something else going on here, or it was some kind of experiment or probe or something like that sent to see how it would operate and how we would treat it. Rather than like necessarily like a manned ship with a crew that's like that could just as easily just jump to being around the Earth or jump over by the sun, or if they can do these things like that, why would you want to go on that long ride and trajectory and do one little thing to kind of suggest that you're not like a normal comet or an asteroid?
Well, don't we do or attempt to do the same things with our probes as we send them out through the solar system?
Yeah.
They're doing drive-bys of planets. They're not necessarily stopping by.
Sure.
And they continue on. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are examples of that.
Yeah.
So why think that that Oumuamua would be any different? And another way to look at Oumuamua, maybe it's a piece of a ship, right? That it's a part of a ship that came through. Now, the other question is, why haven't we seen a second one or third one? You know, a debris trail, if you will. But it did turn on its own. It did accelerate without gravity. There wasn't any gas emitted from the back. There wasn't any type of gas trail, something that was heated by the sun, and like a comet, as you described. And also, its shape isn't of any. Now, could it be that it was just anomalous, that the shape was natural, it just happened that way? Okay. Yeah. In Avi's book, he points out two things. And I brought this up with Isaac Arthur, the physicist, last week. Avi said two things that stopped me in my tracks. One, it was flat and shaped like a pancake. That's crazy town, number one. And number two, it exhibited a metallic surface, a reflective metallic surface. Now, could that be natural? Yes, it could be. Anything is possible. But it's just like every point that we would need to show that it was natural, it exhibited the opposite of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think from the little I know of Avi's work, I think one of the things that he suggested was something like because of its surface being metallic-like, that it could create a reflective pressure in some way with solar radiation that could explain its acceleration as just one possible theory. I know that in the NASA photos that I saw prior on it, they were describing it a lot more like a long cigar-shaped object. So I'm not sure whose shape assessments are correct here or whatever. I'm just going off of a few different things I've seen on the object. But I guess my main point is, Jimmy, yeah, sure, we do that and we send probes, and maybe, maybe there's a galactic civilization that just decided to launch something towards our sun so that we would see it, and it would fly by us. But my main point is just that the level of technological advancement of a lot of the species that clearly visit Earth a lot, based on the countless contact experiences, CE5s, witness accounts, UFO sightings, cinematography of people like, James Gilliland at Isetti Ranch. And I've been up there and seen tons of ships on his property, and I've seen them all over the place. And it's like, why would they even need to do that? I mean, unless this civilization was just having fun and throwing a probe by us, and maybe that's the case. And to the mainstream science world, it's big. It's like, oh my God, a probe from an alien civilization? My God, Jim, that could be huge. This could be an object. If we could have only caught it and studied it, we would know something more. But they're just not paying attention and completely ignoring the literally millions of sightings happening all the time around this planet of highly advanced spacecraft coming in, shooting 90 degrees, turning, blipping, shooting through tears in the sky. I mean, you name it. So anyway, that's what I'm saying is it doesn't mean that much to me, to be honest.
Now, the last thing that I want to discuss with you is consciousness and what it is. And I feel that there is a shift in science, and certainly in physics, to having a conversation about consciousness today, where that wasn't the case in the past. You had philosophy on one side, you had science on the other. Before that, philosophy was science, right? And we've had these changes. But scientists and physics really did not want to go into the realm of something that they couldn't measure or prove. and they never wanted to put consciousness or what that could be on the table. I think it's starting to shift. Do you think that this is now a conversation that physicists are ready to start having?
I think that it's a conversation we have to have. It's required. We're at the point where we understand that observational analysis requires understanding the nature of observation as much as it does analysis. You can't observe without studying the observer and the nature of that which is perceiving.
And you can't measure without observing. So, are we in a paradox? Is this a bona fide conundrum?
It is a bona fide conundrum.
Or are we at a point now where physicists may be up to the challenge of trying to measure and trying to observe what consciousness may be?
Yeah. It's as I said, it's required. We have to do it. We have to understand it. But we've built so many specialization containers to our studies in science that I find it extraordinarily fascinating when I see these breakthroughs in neuroscience and neurobiology, and that hasn't propagated over to the physicists yet, right? And it takes bridges, like my good friend William Brown and I talk about this a lot when we do our Resonance Academy sessions where we do Q&As with the students, once a month, every third Wednesday. If you're a Resonance Academy student, you get to get on live with William and I and Jamie and Marshall Lefferts, who wrote Cosmometry, amazing book on my shelf here behind me. And essentially, William and I love to get into this because the kinds of incredible things that we find and discover in biophysics, the actual study of what's going on in the body and the measurable experimental things that prove that the body has these incredible capacities, and especially in relationship to matter, things like water and electricity and the way that we operate is just this vast wellstream of beauty and knowledge that literally breaks the ground in other fields, in areas like physics where you just think that things are this way and it's got to be this way because there's so much momentum in the thinking around it. But, it still surprises me a lot that when I look out into the world and I realize, wow, everybody still thinks quantum mechanics is the thing, that it's correct, the standard model is correct, and that it's got all the stuff figured out. And I'm like, my God, I 10 years ago or 15 years ago realized the faults in the standard model of physics, And Nassim has been, nailing the nails in the coffin of the standard model for years and years and years. And yet it's still what everybody believes is the standard model of physics. That's the reason why they call it the standard model, And so it takes a while for these things to turn. And I will say that the greatest breakthroughs I see in the fields of biophysics, in the fields of technology, in the fields of astrophysics, in you name the area, you name the academic study, the people who have done the work to understand consciousness, the mechanisms of consciousness, the metaphysics of consciousness, the long history of philosophy connected to consciousness. That's where the breakthroughs come from, because we're not separating the two. We're understanding that consciousness is inherent to the patterns that we perceive. It's inherent to the nature of space and time itself. And so physics and psychology and philosophy and cultural anthropology and all of these fields unite around a single hub. And that hub is how we perceive. That hub is consciousness itself and the ways and patterns through which consciousness evolves.
Physicists, I keep saying physicists, but let's just stay right there.
Sure.
Know that they can speak, laugh, feel, taste, right? Emotions. They know that consciousness exists and that they can think and postulate about these subjects because they are sentient and they have consciousness.
Yes.
But one of the things that I think it comes down to chemistry, and that they feel that there is a little piece of consciousness in every particle. And once you get a mass of things together, the consciousness builds up and creates, like in our brain, right? Or any other sentient being. Sure. Do you follow that path? Do you think that there's a little taste of consciousness in every particle? And if that is the case, isn't that primed and ready to be measured?
Yeah, there's problems with that approach. And I'll just point to where that approach comes from. You want to know the lineage of that idea?
Okay, talk to me.
Just go back to Descartes. Descartes is the guy, because Descartes, he's trying to say, like, he both provided brilliant insights. One of his brilliant insights was kind of the formative idea of the Enlightenment, and that was essentially, I think, therefore I am, and also that I have the ability to discover truth myself. I don't need the church to do it. I don't need a higher power to do it. I don't need anybody else to do it. I can find the truth. I am self-empowered to do that. That was a big thing and a big contribution from Descartes. However, he also took another road. And the other road was about trying to understand where and how consciousness sits inside of bodies. And he essentially looked at animals and everything else, any kind of life, as a machine. And he thought consciousness must be separate from the machine. That means, and if consciousness is separate from the machine, then probably the only thing that actually has consciousness is humans, because humans have souls, right? So even though he was like kind of escaping out of the trajectory of the control of the church and all of that, he still played right along with the church's idea that human beings are the only things with souls. That means animals and all other life forms are automatons. And that if you could just cut them up into small enough pieces, you would understand how everything in the universe works. It's all a mechanical engine, right? And this idea has continued to persist in our studies of physics and philosophy since that time, and particularly in the physics world and anything using the scientific method. It says, if I take this object and I break it down enough, then I can understand all the parts inside of it, and therefore I will fully understand it. But there's already one area in physics where this becomes a huge fallacy and a big problem, because we literally take protons and we slam them together at near the speed of light. And now remember, back in the beginning of this whole presentation, Jimmy, we were talking about protons, and I said something. I said, protons never die. Protons last for lifetimes of the universe. They're literally the most stable object in the entire universe is the proton, right? Yeah. And so these things are basically perfect. If there's anything we could say is perfect in the universe, it's the structure of a proton. Because, I mean, if you deem perfection by longevity, then it definitely is, right? But we don't, to understand the proton, what do? We slam it into another proton and blast that thing apart. We literally destroy it, and we take pictures of the wreckage. Mm-hmm. And, Nissim used to say this thing that I absolutely loved. And he was like, trying to understand the proton by slamming it into another proton is like taking two 747s and crashing them together in midair and taking photos of the wreckage. I love that because he's dead on.
The best Nassim impersonation I have ever.
Thanks. I love Nassim.
That was I love him spot on the money right there.
But yeah, he's like, it's like crashing two 747 jets together and then taking pictures of the wreckage to try to understand how to build a 747. You can't do it that way. And this is also true of consciousness. Because the more we actually understand the nature and functionality of consciousness, the more we realize it's not like a bunch of pieces put together that build a structure and then you have consciousness, and they're all little parts of consciousness that make up a bigger thing of consciousness. No, right. Consciousness is holographic. It operates much more like the model of the small, the proton, contains inside of it a holographic information set that connects to the entire universe. And that consciousness is not isolated to a proton or a Planck unit or a collection of those that make a brain. Consciousness actually is the wormhole information network of space-time itself. It's literally space-time. Consciousness is space-time. And yet, as an individualized being or soul or whatever you want to call me, and by the way, I think animals and many other forms of life, we all have our own self-aware referenced points of consciousness.
Sure.
We are an actual convergence point of consciousness that self-sustains itself and exists with the same level of self-referencing capacity as a proton, where we literally carry information body after body after body after body that we incarnate into. We exist with awareness even when we're not inside of a vehicle like a body. And when we're in a body, our body is actually an interactive holographic geodesic mirror of our soul nature. It's part of who we are also. And so when you get into this, it's like, the idea is so much less about putting together the parts to make a whole and much more about understanding that the whole is in all the parts and all the wholes are sacred. All the wholes are special. Every piece, every aggregation, every person, every individualized essence of being is beautiful and perfect and cannot actually even be defined or a circle be drawn around it unless you're taking into context eternity.
Now, has ET measured this? Has an extraterrestrial civilization advanced enough to measure this? Measure what cannot be measured?
Yeah, well, I don't know if measured is the right word. But to define or to understand the holographic geometry through which consciousness functions, I think is doable. In fact, Caroline and I, hung out for a long time going into this puzzle of like, how do we measure consciousness?
Right.
How do we prove consciousness? And to her, I also made the point of, we have been measuring consciousness all along. Like Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Group, we're measuring the effect of consciousness on random number generators. We measure consciousness every time we prove that remote viewing works, just like in her movie Superhuman, where she essentially is like proving that works. We measure consciousness based on the experience of the subtle energetic field and understanding that the quantum vibrational field around the body responds and moves based on consciousness. So you can bend a spoon, you can telekinetically move an object. There are so many things that we already are proving in the science of understanding how consciousness works and interacts with space-time. And for me, if there's any if there's a galactic model, an extraterrestrial model for how consciousness works and operates, it's probably the one that I brought through when I was 15 years old. And I call it the Unified Harmonic Matrix. And it's essentially a quantum geometric model, a countable geometric model that leverages harmonic geometries to understand the fundamental interactive relationships of consciousness with each layer of space-time and each dimension of existence.
Right.
And how that process essentially allows the universality of all kind of experience to happen while still simplifying the way that we actually energetically interact with everything.
Another great conversation, my friend. And I can't wait. We're going to get to hang out in a couple of months at Disclosure Fest. You're going to be here in California, down in San Diego with Liberties. And here's the deal. When do you arrive? And will we have time in a couple of weeks to hang out?
In San Diego, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm coming in the day before, the night before the conference, and I'll pretty much be there at the conference in San Diego for the 2 days, and then I think I leave Monday night, something like that.
Well, that's reason enough for me to come down to San Diego and hang out.
Yeah,
right?
Come down and hang out. That sounds great.
Adam, behave and be well. And for everybody, it's very simple. AdamApollo.com is the website. Go and hang out at the Resonance Academy. Adam, you're the absolute very best, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy. Great to see you, everyone. Thanks for having me on your show. And love all you guys in the chat. Thank you for sharing and writing and expressing yourselves so eloquently.
Adam Apollo. That's why Adam was on with us tonight. It's that mug. Thank you. Have a great night, my friend.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Take care. See you again soon.
Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Oh, look, I got double screens. I got double screens tonight, so I can shift over to here. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast on a copyright of 2022 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, right here, Billy Carson, The Secrets of Egypt. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night, I want everybody to be safe. It's time to fade to black.